What if ads didn't feel complicated, expensive, or like a total gamble? Because that's what I feel for myself, as well as what I hear a lot of other business owners talk about. You probably wondered, should I be running ads? When is the right time? And how do I even get started without wasting money? In today's episode of Smarter Online Business, I'm joined by Paul and Melissa Pruitt, who help entrepreneurs use ads as growth tool in a way that actually makes sense for their business. And what I love about this conversation is we really simplify things. We talk about what can ads realistically do for your business, when it actually makes sense to start using them, and how to think about ads as part of your overall strategy, and how to get started without overcomplicating everything. If ads have ever felt confusing or out of reach, I know they have for me. This episode is going to help you see them in a completely different way. Let's dive in. Struggling to turn website traffic into real sales? You're not alone, and you don't have to figure it out all yourself. Welcome to Smarter Online Business, the podcast for course creators, coaches, and e-commerce entrepreneurs who want their websites to convert visitors into buyers without the tech overwhelm. I'm your host, Carrie Saunders, a website strategist and conversion expert with over 20 years of experience. Each episode delivers simple, proven strategies to help you generate more revenue and make your website your smartest sales tool. Welcome back to the show. Today we have two special guests with us today. They are a husband and wife duo, Paul and Melissa Pruitt. They are online marketing experts and ad experts, and they're here to teach us a bit more about ads. So welcome, Paul and Melissa, to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks so much for having us.
You're welcome. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I've been following you for several years and I haven't dabbled in ads yet. So this is going to be really good for me because I know that's going to be next on my list, maybe in a yearish or so. So tell us a little bit more about you guys. I want to hear from your words, like a little bit more about Paul and Melissa.
Yeah. So we do business coaching. We work with business owners, online entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and we really focus on the marketing and sales aspect of business owners. So helping people with everything from SEO, copywriting, and ads, of course. That's a big piece. We talk to people a lot about lots of different ways of attracting clients, whether it's organically or through paid traffic. And our goal is just to really help those business owners bring more clients into their business. We both have different walks of life. If you want to get into that, you can, because we've had a variety of different experiences and businesses, both online as well as like brick and mortar businesses as well too. And we love helping people. So this is our jam, and we love helping people, and we love talking to people about how to bring more people into your world. So.
Well, and I love, I've been in your world for about a year or so now, and I love how you guys like to bring together both organic as well as paid and just kind of have that variety on how we're getting leads. I think that's very smart and, something some people don't do. They focus on one or the other and don't put a mix of that in there, which I think is much healthier.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to the experience. Most people are not professional marketers. Like they have their business, they do their thing really well, while it's maybe potentially like a cook or a chef in a restaurant, or somebody that has like teaches yoga online. Like it doesn't matter what the business is, they typically know that thing really well. And the irony, I think any of us has done anything with sales in our lifetime. When we try to sell ourselves, we kind of cringe. If we work for somebody else for an hourly rate, like we can sell somebody else's thing because we don't feel emotionally attached to it. So even in this journey with what we do, we love the organic and the paid side because it's like what we do in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
There's word of mouth, there's relationships, we hang out in groups and committees and do things in the real world. And there's other places where it's like, oh, we need to spend a little bit more money to have a storefront that has traffic, or we need to go and pay to go to that networking event because it isn't a free one. So there's a lot of things in the offline space that we just pull into the online world. And when people understand that, they kind of, oh, this actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people just don't have experience with paid ads. And if they do, it's more or less they probably gave some billionaire a whole bunch of money and they didn't get any return on it. And that's a scary thing for them. So then they decide not to do it and avoid it. And then they lean in like, oh, no, I do everything organic. Paid is like evil or whatever. And normally it's just an insecurity of them not understanding like how to play the online marketing game. But for all of us, it's ROI on time and energy. If we're doing it organic, that's in the real world or online. And then we can get a lot of our time and energy back if we do have the financial resources to trade for that.
Mhm.
And either way, you need that ROI. You're not going to keep going to a networking event for years if nobody ever gives you a referral, so you're going to find a different room to be in.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like a lot of business owners, including me, I've been in that position where I'm like, well, I really should do paid ads, but I don't want to waste my money because I don't know what I'm doing. And I've even taken an ad course and haven't taken your guys's yet. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm trying to stay in the lane I'm looking at right now and not getting too distracted. But so how would you help somebody who's pondering it and considering it to know when they're ready, to know when they are at that point where, yes, it does make sense to use ads. Maybe at first you won't get an ROI, but if you do these certain things, you eventually will. But how do you know that you're in that lane and getting ready to be ready to do ads? So it's not so scary.
Yeah, no, that's a great decision. I think the work comes before the ads even come. And it's really the first thing I would say, number one, because we help a lot of our clients with messaging, is making sure that the messaging is clear. We're always looking at messaging as a big key component, because if the messaging isn't clear on what exactly you're offering and the transformation that you're promising with your offer, then the ads aren't going to give you the results that you want. And Paul will talk about this, that ads only amplify what's going on. So if your messaging isn't clear or wonky, if people land on if they come to your sales page and they don't even know what you're talking about, or it's very confusing with the copy and the messaging there, then the ads aren't going to work. So I would say one of the first things to evaluate is just being really clear on your messaging and really clear on your offer, whatever it might be, what the promise is, what the transformation is, how that person is going to achieve what they want to achieve, and being really super clear on that before you start to explore ads and putting ad money behind that. Because that messaging, if that's off, then it's definitely going to affect the performance of the ads.
Yeah. And if I can just add to that, there's no perfect answer to that. Do you actually have any cash flow, that you can pre-invest? Because we do have some people that, they're semi-retired or they'll do a career or they have a nest egg and they're able to go right out the gate day one doing ads because they can risk that financial element. Not everybody's positioned that way. So even if you have a really mature business, if you're going paycheck to paycheck type thing, might not be a good time to do ads. There might be things you need to, again, work on the messaging and the offer and other elements. And as Melissa references that, the ads amplify. They don't fix a funnel problem. They don't fix an audience misalignment. They don't fix an offer issue that you have. It'll only amplify, what you have. So if you're doing something that's not working, if you put money behind it, you're donating money out to those billionaires that own all the social media networks and stuff, because you're not going to get that ROI. So you always want to risk, anything in business is a calculated risk. And if you stay safe forever, then that means you're not putting yourself out there and your competitors are, whether you are spending money in ads or you're showing up on a live or recording a podcast or anything. All this stuff is uncomfortable for most of us, So, but the idea though is if our competitors are waking up today and they're doing ads and attracting clients, or they're doing the podcasts or the blogs or showing up on lives and things like that, they're going to get the attention while we're sitting here quiet, being safe, not taking any risks. So there's always some type of risk. You just want it to be a calculated risk. So even when it comes to ads, be in a position where your cash flow, you have enough revenue or money that you can play with it in a sense. You don't want it to be like gambling where you're like, oh, I put my entire house up for, and if it doesn't work, my entire business is going to go under. But you need enough money in to make it worthwhile, but not too much where if you don't get the ROI, that you risked everything. But the whole idea with marketing, and that's what ads, what the cool thing with that is, it allows you to amplify quicker so you can get results and feedback faster. So you can know like, oh, my message is really off. Oh, the audience I'm targeting is not buyers. Oh, the offer that I have is totally, I want it, but nobody else in the market's willing to pay for it. So it allows you to get that feedback loop a lot quicker than just doing organic, crossing your fingers, hoping and praying that whoever's controlling the AI or the algorithm today shows it to the right people, and a lot of times it ends up being our parents that like and comment on our posts instead of a potential buyer. That's what the algorithms are doing to a lot of us. So it just allows you to get to that result a lot quicker.
Well, and I think you brought up a good lead into my next question is, once you do get, we'll just call it brave enough, because I feel like that's kind of what a lot of people think of when they're a business owner and, starting to do ads. Once you get brave enough to try the ads. I know just from listening to you guys for the past couple of years, you need to iterate on it and learn from it. It's kind of like, when we're going to release this episode we're recording right now, I'll have done this podcast for 3 years, which I can't believe I'm saying that,
Wow.
but 3 years,
Wow.
right? But so it took practice to get to the point where I am now. And talk to us about, how do you iterate on those ads? How do you practice and see how they're working and see, maybe it's just a little tiny 1 or 2 word tweak, right? Sometimes like the messaging is completely off. Is there like a good strategy for, testing and refining the ads once they get
Yeah.
going on it?
Yeah. And we take people through an entire process with this, with something that we call pain testing. But the first thing is just getting some initial ads out there to kind of see what resonates with people on those certain pain points. All of us have done some sort of in our lifetime, some sort of client avatar type of exercise, but it's really like really understanding what are those pain points, what are the things that your person is, having trouble with or challenges with that's really going to hit home. And having those initial ads really just to test what people are, if they'll click on that. If you have something, a really compelling statement or a pain point, is this you type of ad? And starting off with something like that, just to get an idea of what people are resonating with. If you start off small with that, and again, we have this process with pain testing, you can really see what pains your audience, resonate with. And then from there, it's a matter of, crafting ads, that lead into offers that are based upon those pain points with that. The initial thing is just getting something out there to start first. I mean, that's always the hardest thing is the first time that you do that. But if you can test out those different pain points that people have in some ads, it'll give you a chance to really get an understanding of what your audience is actually interested in, what resonates with them, and then lean into that messaging when you're creating ads for your programs or an upcoming event or whatnot.
Yeah, and I'd add to that where most people mess up when they do testing is they change too many things.
Mm.
So it's almost like being in a laboratory, like in science, and it's like, okay, have a something that is fixed that you can use as the standard, and then only change one variable at a time so that you can test against the standard itself. So you want to have your initial ads and have them running, and then potentially it is that hook, that headline, that reason that somebody would engage, and only test that thing initially, and then potentially from there, once you have your winners, and that's the key there, because if you give yourself some patience, and I want to take you out of the ads for a second, like all of us as adults, we forget this, but it's like when you have a child or you were a child, it's like the parents didn't like say, okay, you didn't walk the first day, so I give up on you, or the first time you rode a bike and you skinned your knee and you're mad, or yelling at your parent, whatever. It's like you had to get back up, you had to iterate, you had to learn from it. Oh, I'm not going to do that again. Oh, I should push the pedal this way. Oh, I need to balance this way, and it takes some time. Now, when we were kids and we were younger, whether it was baseball or playing the piano or whatever the skill set that we have, we a lot of times forget, like we weren't the master of that right out the gate. We weren't some, prodigy, child prodigy out there. Like we had to practice and learn and iterate and iterate and iterate. And it's no different with marketing. Very rarely do any of us get up to bat and hit the ball right out of the park on the first swing. Like we have to see, like, oh, this is what happened. Let me learn. Let me look at the stats. Okay, this is informing me what the next change is. But where most people mess up is when they have something that isn't working, then they totally trash everything and then they go somewhere else. And it's like, no, let's do some small incremental iterations of one element so we can see, oh, okay, now we got that to the maximum that it can perform. Let's start changing the photo, or let's do different videos, and let's see about those which one performs, and then we can go to the call to action. But a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm doing a different hook, a different image, and a different call to action, and then if something does well or not, they don't know what it was, and that kind of gets people out of that black box, not understanding. Just be patient in those iterations, give yourself some grace. And for something Melissa and I probably say to each other at least once or twice a week, everything takes longer than we thought.
Always.
Even as far progressed as we are, and we're fast starts and we implement very quickly, and we have a team these days. But even then, it still takes 3, 4, or 5 times the amount of time that we originally thought it was going to take, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Well, and I think those are some really good points that the business owners listening just need to be reminded of, because even myself, I have to remind myself this because I've been in business almost 24 years, and I didn't give up in the beginning. Just because I'm doing something new now, I need to iterate on it at least enough times to know whether it's a viable direction or not. You can't just try something once and throw your hands up in the air if it doesn't work, because you're exactly right. We don't do that as parents to our children, and children try again, And so why don't we give ourselves permissions as business owners to do that, and to try and refine? It's something when we have people working with us with SEO, it's something I remind them of. This is an iterative process. This is going to seem slow at first. We're going to change small things at a time, just like the scientific method. We don't change a whole lot of things at a time because you won't know what worked and what didn't work. And sometimes it takes a little bit for that client to get used to, oh, okay, we need to look at at least 3 months out before we see anything really happening, because we've got to iterate on SEO, for example, several times to see what does the major search engines want this time around, because it's always changing, just like social is always changing.
Yes.
Yeah, and most of us know this as a general life concept, but we're in a world these days of instant gratification, instant results. Like, give me the easy button, from Staples. Like, I don't want to do all the work and like that. We just want to skip step. I mean, we're in an AI world where we want every external thing to do the thing for us. And the interesting thing is that shortcut is very rarely the path to actual success. It's the ones that are patient that do. I mean, think about, you even said at the beginning, this is 3 years in on your podcast, right? So, like, congratulations. And also the perspective in how you're handling and running your podcast right now, right this second. If you go back to podcast number 1 and you listen to it, all of us would do this. We would probably cringe and go like, "Oh my goodness!" Now in the moment we were like, "Oh, we're good, we got this," But that's growth. That's slow, incremental growth. That's feedback. That's you testing different things along the way and discovering. And a lot of us, we just need to give ourselves permission to go through that process itself. And for us, and I've owned several businesses that were beyond $1 million a year revenue businesses in my lifetime. And the key is like, can I outlast my competitors? So every market goes up and down and all like that. But it's like, if I can hang in longer and iterate and figure things out where you're going to give up as my competitor, I'm always going to win. So we just have to be more resilient in all aspects of our business.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was actually, as you're thinking about that, like, we started with a specific shopping cart software back in the day, back in 2003, 2002, actually. And we've outlasted all the other third-party developers somehow. Well, it was my stubbornness. But, we have, so that outlasting is definitely true. Now, I do want to also transition, though, for those who are thinking, and I'm curious of this as well, of doing ads soon. I've always wondered, what about budget? What should my budget expectations? What's realistic and what's not for starting out with, let's say, Facebook ads? Because I know you guys do Facebook ads a lot. So what would be my expectations, or the listeners' expectations on budgets for around that?
Yeah, so this is always a question. This is one of the first questions working with anyone. And the cool thing with what we do in our world, we do more coaching and mastermind. Like, we teach and train people to do it themselves. So we're like that step before an agency, because the moment that people go with an agency, then the agency dictates and tells them like how much to spend, but they're the ones behind the scenes, figuring out the numbers. The real question, so it's whenever we're posed that question, we have to always flip it, because that's the uneducated side, is like, oh, can I spend $100? Can I just spend $500? And does this have to be thousands? And it really comes down to, again, this is a cash flow with your business. This is just knowing it from a perspective of experience. It really comes down to how much are you able and willing to spend to acquire a client, a paying client. Because if you have a $20 necklace that you're trying to get people to buy on Facebook and Instagram as an impulse buy, that is very different process that you would have to go through, because you can't afford. You have shipping costs, you have breakage, you have lost things in the mail, you have returns, you have all these other elements for you to make a profit, and you have hard costs. Where if you have a digital product, it might be a little bit harder sell, because it's something that's like, you're talking about it, but people can't touch and feel it, type thing. And there's other elements that have to go into that. So it really comes down to, depending on the price point of your offer, Because of course, if you're selling something that's like $100,000 investment, people didn't wake up this morning going they can throw out $100,000. Like that's a longer runway, and that might be a house or an expensive car or a big investment type thing, where somebody else that's selling maybe like a $97 program or $500, $1,000 thing. How much is a lead worth to you? A qualified lead? Because you might do webinars and you might know the webinars you do out of 100 people, 20 people always buy from you. Like you might have a 20% ratio that you might know, like that's how good it is. So you know how much your offer is. And then so it's like how much are you able to spend to get those 100 leads to find your 20 people?
Mhm.
Because if we define that, then it's like if you're making the money, then really isn't the budget infinite if you're getting the return? So where most people where we can't afford is when you say like, what's the budget? Like I only have $500 to spend. Then it's like, okay, well, what is that 500? What do you want that $500 to do? Are you just looking for people to give up an email address? Are you looking for them to attend a webinar or an event? Is there a sales mechanism in that moment? And like how long can you float the money? Like, do you need it back immediately? Or because we in our world, we make our money back on our ads where we're at the break-even point more than 60 days out, 2 months out. Okay. But we run a nearly seven-figure business because we can afford that cash flow. And then the average value of somebody that does say yes is in the thousands and thousands of dollars lifetime, versus selling a $20 thing once. So, but we know our business and we know our numbers, and I know that scares a lot of people. It's like numbers, yeah. But you need to know how much can you afford. So you have your fixed business expenses. You also have variable as far as like every time you get a client, is there certain things, staffing or supplies that you have to, per transaction. But if you know how much a lead is worth to you, as far as an opt-in, qualified lead versus also how much you can afford to acquire a client, then really it's just then tuning your ads so that you're making a positive, return on investment. So every time that you spend that $100, you're getting $500 back. That's in the marketing world, they call that a 5x ROAS, return on ad spend. So that means you put $1 out and you get $5 back. That's really highly profitable with a digital product that's just information. But for somebody that's selling like a car, or something, like they have a lot of expense in that vehicle. They might need a different return on they can't spend $1,000 to get somebody that's going to come in to buy a car. If they're a dealership, they only might make a couple $1,000s on it, and it's not worth it to them. So it's really comes down to how much are you able to spend to acquire a client, or how much is a lead worth to you? Because we have some clients that are willing to spend upwards to almost $100 per lead, because in their industry, like we have one, they do like construction and remediation. Like if you have a bad rainstorm or a plumbing leak happens, they go in and like clean up all the mold and all those things. Like their average ticket value is really expensive, because that's like somebody that's like their basement just flooded out, and now now it's a $20,000-$30,000 opportunity. They're willing to pay up to $700, per lead. And they do actively in different ways. And they do that through a lot of Google type stuff. Now, a lot of us would cringe and go, oh my goodness, spending $700, for a lead, we're in a different business model. So I'm sorry that I can't give that exact answer that everybody always wants, but it's the honest answer that if you truly know the cost of business, if you know what it costs you to acquire a client, like what you're able to afford to pay, then it's tuning your ads in to get it as close to that number or under that number as much as possible. Because then it's like an ATM machine. It's not a slot machine anymore, so you're not gambling. You're there, and it's like, okay, there is a fee, but every time I go do, I get money out. And I'd rather have people have a predictable business that way. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, that actually makes perfect sense. And I knew going in and asking you that question, I would get a Paul answer.
I know that's a good or bad thing.
No, I think it's a good thing, because I don't think people think they think about the spend. They think about, oh, I spent $10 on this person, or I spent $1, or I spent, $100 on this person. They don't think about the fact that, okay, I spent $10 on this person, but I made, $490, or, I'm just
Right.
throwing out numbers there,
Yeah.
maybe that's a $500, income you brought in. So you made 490 on them, especially if it's a digital project. So I don't think people necessarily think that through. And I think that's, my engineering brain just goes crazy over that. Sure. I love that. I love that answer, but I think it also helps those listening who maybe aren't the engineering brain that I have kind of equate it to, I'm going to put $1 in the ATM and I'm going to get 5 back. Well,
Mhm.
sure, I'm going to do that all day, right?
Right.
If we had one of those around here, I'd be doing that all day. That's all I do, right? Because you're just getting extra money back for, the effort, the little money that you're putting in. So I think looking at it as an investment
Mhm.
more so than an expense, especially when you've, aligned your ads correctly, your messaging and, your landing pages and all the things that come after that, aligning those all correctly. It's kind of a no-brainer to do it.
Yeah, and also coming back, there's always a cost to acquiring a client. So that's the financial side that we were just talking about. What are you able and willing to invest? A lot of people don't realize they're doing the same thing in organic. They're just giving up their time and energy.
Mm.
So, and that's really the trade-off when you're doing ads, you're just able to get back your time and energy. So it's like, when I was younger, going right out of high school, I went right into real estate. And there was agents in my office that made a lot of money a year, but they were accomplished. They had referrals coming to them, and they had money where they could afford to do full page ads in the local news. I'm dating myself, the newspapers and magazines back then. This is pre-internet, right? And on my end, I didn't have that money. Now, what I did have was time at 18, 19 years old. So I'm going to really date myself, but I was with Century 21. I put a gold jacket on, and I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and I door knocked neighborhoods to try to find people that are thinking about buying or selling a house. Now, that first year, I made a little over $48,000. I sold 23 homes when I was a teenager. And what that taught me, though, is I didn't have the money before that. I got the money, but then the second year I was able to do ads.
Mm.
But interesting, I wanted to be a top producer, so I started cold calling instead of door knocking. Back in the day when people used to call, and but what it was though is like I could cover a whole neighborhood by hanging up the phone, going to the next, going to the next. But then when technology got to the point where nobody was picking up the phone because of caller ID, then that changed that game. But then I had more money at that point, so I was doing websites. I had ads. I was on Realtor.com and Zillow. I was doing, all the things. So I didn't need to go door knock anymore. I didn't need the cold call anymore. So the same thing with organic, where you're posting or you're going into a group or something like that, or you're networking on a Zoom call with other people. You're just trading off the value of your time is in that moment. You're just trading off the hours and the energy instead of the financial investment. But there's a cost to it.
Mhm.
When you finally get that client, did it take you 20 hours of effort to get? So how much was your time worth? So there's that delicate balance. A lot of us don't look at it that way. It's like, oh, okay, I did a launch and I got 5 people that bought. And it's like, okay, haven't done a launch for 3 months. So during that 3 months, all the social media posting, all the things that you did, all the energy, all the time, all the networking, all the DMs, all the thing you did, it manifested 5 sales. Could you have gotten those 5 sales by putting a couple hundred or a few $100 or maybe 1,000 or two in the ads, and it gotten all your time back?
Mhm.
So that it's always a resource. You can't escape. We all can't escape that. Most of us are not Oprah or some mega celebrity that if you just put a message out and say, "Give me $20,000. Here's a link. I'm not going to tell you what it is." Like if Oprah did that, she would sell out because she has high level authority and she has, and we have people like that in all of our spaces that are just celebrity factor. People don't have to work hard to get the sale. And most of us are putting in the work. We're either hammering that nail every day and building the house ourselves, or we're spending money and hiring the contractor to do it for us. So it's just a delicate balance as far as the resource.
Well, and before you even made that point, Paul, I was actually thinking that same thing that, wow, how much time am I actually spending
Yeah.
creating content organically and all the things, and how much am I actually getting back? Because I've been doing this business for 24 years. I need a break. You know what I mean? So like
We feel
I
that.
need I need a day where I can be like, oh, for these 2 hours, I can go do something creative. I don't have to like grind on anything or, try to get all the things done. So you're even making my brain think, okay, maybe once I get this one big task I have right now on my plate done, maybe I should explore ads shortly after that and see what my budget is. Think about the things you talked about as far as like, the value of the client I would bring in. So how much would I be willing to pay to bring that client in? And, I think you're really helping us think through the logical and really kind of the emotional side of how do I start this ad thing? I've heard it's great. I've heard it can really, bring in a lot of money kind of on a passive way in a way once you've got it set up and tweaked right. You would need to obviously touch it some, but it's less on. You don't have to be on so much and on and ready and social media and chatting and all the things where you can kind of set this thing and just keep an eye on it and it's kind of like a fish tank. You feed it every once in a while and you're good. Versus like a dog, you got to go walk all the time and feed all the time, right? So kind of make it a fish tank instead of like, a pet that you have to tend to constantly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just making me think about doing ads potentially maybe within 6 months, not by the end of the year now.
Hey,
So
yeah, that's awesome. I think when it's done right too, with organic and paid traffic, and when you do it right, they work hand in hand together. Because again, when you have the ads dialed in, getting that time back, then it does give you some relief so that when you are then doing things organically, connecting with people on social, you show up even better because you have less of that pressure, that stress, and you can really show up in those groups and contribute or go to that networking event and not be exhausted or feel that pressure to get it. So it's kind of a nice marriage of the two. And that's why the things that, we just love teaching people is that all of it works. And when you have it dialed in really well, it's a marriage of the two, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I think, what you just said there, Melissa, it really made me think that would be so wonderful. Like, I love talking to people. I love helping people. I love going into Facebook, groups and, giving them advice. That's how I started this business back in 2002, was helping people on online forums, which I'm dating myself now because, those don't exist anymore, really, unless you call Reddit one of those. But, and it would be nice to be able to just do that genuine help still and not be like, oh, I got to get this done quickly because I have to go do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
So I love that you brought up the point that it really kind of helps, marry the both together, and it can make the organic stuff more fun and just, more satisfying on your end. Because, most of us here who have online businesses are here because we want to help somebody in some sort of capacity, whether it's, yoga, cooking, coaching, whatever, we're here to help people. And I think that can help us get back into that helping mode. And I don't know, I feel like a relief already just listening to you guys talk us through this.
Well, it's cool because you have that perspective of all these years as well. And there's a lot of people that are newer. We're from that day, and I'm going to say it's not going to relate to a lot of people that are newer, but from the V Bulletin days of the forums and stuff like that, back in the day. And these days it's like things have evolved, but they haven't really changed. So years ago, a business they leaned on referrals and location, everything like that, but they used to advertise in the newspaper and they used to advertise in the telephone book. And now instead of a telephone book, it's Google. And they used to take ads out in radio, and now it's podcasts. They used to do, again, the newspapers and magazines and stuff like that. Now it's blogs and vlogs. Like, it's not that anything's new. It's just it's transferred into a new medium. But a lot of us that came into business in recent years, we don't know that difference. Because back in the day, if you wanted business, there wasn't the internet, you only had word of mouth, and it was only to like your 20 friends that you had. Like, you had to go out there and hustle to get people in. And what's really cool, if you think of the ads, I'm going to take you from your 6-month time frame down to even sooner, is
Okay.
that where the biggest fear of people entering the ads is they're truly thinking of like, I need to go out there and find complete strangers that don't know who I am and convince them to come into my world. And while that is, yes, because 99% of people out there don't know who we all are, and there is probably most likely somebody today thinking about buying our product and service, but we're not relevant to them. So that's why we need to get out there and find them. And the best way is through paid media to do that. But the interesting thing is most of us, like you've been doing the podcast for 3 years, you've been in business for 23 plus years, like these elements, you already have traffic, you already have influence. But what you haven't been doing is just doing simple, very low cost ads that get triggered because somebody is already on your website today. Somebody is looking at that page, they're ready to check out, but they hesitate, they abandon the cart. You could have an ad just serving to those people. And we're talking like $2, $3 a day, like not thousands. Like you already have traffic, you already have people that are following you on certain social media accounts. Instead of hoping and crossing your fingers that the algorithm, powers to be will show that next post to them because you're ready to promote or launch something new, you can put an ad in front of that group of people that are already warmed up with you, that you've already engaged with organically. So you don't have to go immediately out to like, oh, I had to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars, had this big budget. But what you could do is something that is omnipresent. That means you hit several different channels, very low cost, like probably total less than $10, $15, $20 a day. And then you let it run indefinitely. Just like that fish tank is running all the time, and the low maintenance is tweaking it, maybe seasonally or here or there. But what you're doing is you're amplifying the people that are already in your ecosystem, that are seeing you organically, that you just have retargeting ads that is keeping you top of mind in front of those individuals. Back in the day, we used to call this drip marketing. It's where you're already engaged with somebody in the real world, and then you purposely put them on a follow-up system so they think of you top of mind, so they recommend and refer you, and or they use your product or service when they're ready to and are able to. But because most people that are going to be our buyer might not be our buyer this moment, the exact moment in time, but maybe 2 weeks from now, maybe 2 months from now, maybe 2 years from now. But it's like keeping top of mind with them. Most of us aren't doing that. We're just trying to find a buyer now. And if you're not buying, forget about it. And it's like, but those simple ads, those retargeting ads would be the first step, I would say, that you do. And that's very little to no risk, minimal. And I would probably recommend doing that sooner than 6 months because somebody, as we're talking right now, and also somebody's listening to this podcast right this second or watching it, there is somebody on their social media account or on their website right now, and they're completely invisible. And they're not going to the next step of contacting, booking, buying. And that invisible person now is going to leave your website, leave your social media, and they're going to go somewhere else and buy somewhere else. Unless we have that simple ads that are running that are very low cost, that are retargeting that person because they were on your account today, or they were consuming your content, or they were on your website. So I'd start there.
I just think that Paul, you're convincing me. We'll be talking on our mastermind calls. No, I think that was a really good way to like kind of settle the rest of this podcast and kind of get towards the end of it, because when you were saying that just seems so easy to me.
Yeah,
that seems so easy. Like so much less scary than doing the stranger danger ad, I guess I'll call it. That seems, to do an ad to people who are already familiar with you. It's kind of like, talking to that acquaintance on the streets or in the grocery store or something. That feels a lot less scary than some random person, driving by you on the highway or something, So I think that's a really good way to kind of, put a bow on this conversation and encourage those listeners to, start with the retargeting ads. That's a smart thing because they're already familiar with your song. There's already a little bit of like known trust factor there. So taking that to the next step's a little easier than that stranger out there. So if somebody wants to do the retargeting ads first, is there any, other than what you already said, is there any other like tips you want to like wrap the conversation up with, or just ads in general to help people out?
I'd say that most businesses don't hit a level of success by staying safe. So a lot of us, our values and our belief systems typically control like how we are in our personal lives, control and dictate like our risk tolerance in our businesses. And sometimes we self-sabotage. So you need to get to a certain point where you have to kind of molt out of your old shell that's keeping you productive, but it's also stunting you from growing. Is those that succeed, just, and we're not talking about huge leaps, it's just getting a little uncomfortable, going a little out of your comfort zone. Because at that point, then you're going to grow into a new shell. And then at one point, when that becomes normal, you're going to molt and go again into the next level itself. You can incrementally take risk. But most of us, we're just afraid of failure, and we're afraid of imposter syndrome, and we just get frozen all the time. So when it comes to ads, in this online marketing space, the concept of ads a lot of times comes from this concept of launching, doing this big, huge promotion, all the chips in, going all in. And the reason why you have to do that concept in general is because you haven't pre-influenced anybody. You're going to complete strangers and you're trying to get them to buy from you, just like being in the middle of Times Square, opening up a jacket saying you want to buy a watch, and that's the hard thing for a lot of people. That's when things do feel salesy. So when you think sales and marketing and your hair in the back of your neck stands up, it's most likely because you feel awkward going up to complete strangers and say, buy my thing. But the thing is, we're already showing up in social, we're already doing blogs, we're already doing the podcast, we're doing all the things that we've all been learning. But what it is, we're at the reaction of how the algorithm is going to show our content every day. And most of us don't create content that has virality to it. Like, it doesn't naturally go viral. It's just going to a small group of people. So the idea, though, is if you have 1,000 people on your Instagram that are the right fit people because of what you are talking about, or whatever TikTok or whatever account, YouTube, it doesn't matter, is that they're the right fit people. Instead of like only 12 people that are following you sees that post today, you can intentionally make sure all of them see your post, because you can amplify through ads. You can target, and then they most likely will share and comment, and then their friends will see it, and then they'll engage. And if they're the right fit, they'll start following you. And then it has this natural snowball effect. But it's no different than if you went to that business networking event and you had an incredible conversation because you got to know somebody. And then the next time that you went there, like, hey, that you see that person again, and they want to introduce you to their friend. Because you took the time and the energy, you paid into getting into that room. So in a way, just leverage ads to amplify what you're already doing organically. So you see organically, oh, these posts resonate with my community. These posts get little to no traction at all. Let me put a little money behind the ones that do already attract the right, because I can see the stats. So I'm putting money behind the winners. So don't put money behind losers, because then you're just giving Mark Zuckerberg and the others, all your money, type thing. But take it slow, iterate, be patient. It's going to take longer than you think. Just summarizing some of the things that we were talking about today, and just give yourself some grace. You don't have to be an expert at all these things. That's why we have a lot of people in our world, and just like people when come in your world, you guys help support and help them do the things when it comes to e-commerce and high level and the other elements that you help with on the tech end, because they still need to just be a yoga teacher. They just still need to be the cook. They do not need to be the master marketer. They hire companies like yours and like ours to do these other pieces so they can focus on what they do well. I think it's the most important thing.
I just love your little summary there, because I don't always get all the things in my head to be able to summarize it. You did such a really good job there, Paul. So then, just as a wrap up, we'll have all the links in in our show notes and stuff. But just verbally, what's the best way to get a hold of Paul or Melissa Pruitt and find out a little bit more about each of you?
Oh yeah. Well, thanks. We have our coaching program, Adaptive Marketers. So if you head over to adaptivemarketers.com, you can learn about that as well. We're both on social. It's really easy. Our social handles are real Melissa Pruitt, real Paul Pruitt. So like the real person. So we always love to connect with people as well too. So those are the easiest ways to get in touch with us. And we'd just love to jam and talk. We have lots of different resources available for people too. It's if they want to learn about marketing and ads, all the things.
And I can attest to that. Both Paul and Melissa, every time I've ever had a conversation with them, they're always just so kind and super generous at just, giving their heart out to you and trying to help you best they can. So just love having you guys on our podcast today, Paul and Melissa. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. Thank you.
Okay. I just really love this conversation because it takes something that can feel so overwhelming, like ads, and make it feel much more approachable and strategic. It has me thinking about how I'm going to put ads into my business very, very soon. The biggest takeaway here is that ads are not about doing more. They're about amplifying what's already working in your business. And when you approach them that way, they stop feeling risky and they start feeling like a tool you can grow into. And if you've been on the fence about ads, I hope this episode gave you some clarity on what's possible and where to start. And if you want to make sure your website's ready to support growth, when you do start driving traffic, come join us in the free Facebook group at smarteronlinebusiness.com/Facebook. And as always, you can find all the links to our guests in this podcast on our show notes website at smarteronlinebusiness.com. And we will see you next week.